Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news, interviews, and fun for the WordPress community. Now, welcome your host, Nathan Wrigley. Hello there, and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 402, entitled Exploring e-commerce payment solutions with Aaron Bowie. It was published on Thursday, the 12th of December, 2024. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and before we get stuck into the main event, a few bits of housekeeping. If you are in the Black Friday space still, I know it's been and gone, but believe it or not, there are still well over 100 deals on our Black Friday deals page. And if they're on the page, the theory is they're still working. So go and check that out, wpbuilds.com/black. You can search and filter over there. The other thing to say is that if you would like to advertise your product or service directly on the WP Builds podcast, you'll hear from some companies in a moment that have done just that. Head to wpbuilds.com/advertise to find out more. We would really love to get you or your product or service in front of a WordPress specific audience, which is exactly what we have. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We're also supported by Bluehost. Bluehost, redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com/cloud. And we are also supported by Omnisend. Omnisend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend, the email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try Omnisend today at omnisend.com. And sincere, heartfelt thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost, and Omnisend for their support of the WP Builds podcast. Podcasts like this simply cannot happen without the support of such wonderful companies. Okay, what have we got for you today? Well, this is really interesting. A little while ago, I came across some WooCommerce payment plugins from a provider that I had never heard of. And you're going to hear from Aaron Bowie, who is the developer, the architect of all of these today on the podcast. Now, before you say, well, I don't need to listen to this, I've got my WooCommerce site sorted and all my payment gateways are set up and running. This is a little bit different. Aaron has taken on the responsibility of working directly with banks. And because of the connection directly with banks, you can typically have much lower fees. I know that most people are probably using things like PayPal and Stripe. Well, this is just completely different to that. You have more responsibility because you are connecting directly with a bank. But as I said, you have significantly lower fees. And Aaron talks about how it all works, what kind of banks you can use, and where you can find the plugins themselves. I hope that you enjoy it. I am joined on the podcast today by Aaron Bowie. How are you doing, Aaron?
Not bad.
Yeah,
yourself?
Good. Nice to speak to you. Aaron and I have had about 5 minutes chatting before we hit record. And Aaron is in the UK, but he's in a different part of the UK. He's in Scotland, in Aberdeen. How's it up there? You enjoying life in Aberdeen?
The winter's coming.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like Game of Thrones. It really is literally coming, though. We got Aaron on the podcast today because I saw a tweet from Andrew Palmer. So if Andrew Palmer's listening to this, I hope you feel proud of yourself. I saw a tweet in which Andrew mentioned Aaron's plugins, which we'll get onto in just a moment. And if you're into, selling things online, e-commerce, then this could be a real moment for you. There'll be a whole bunch of stuff in here that might be of interest because it's all about payment gateways and getting funds through e-commerce and WooCommerce and that kind of thing. But before we do that, Aaron, do you just want to give us, like, honestly, as much or as little as you like, just a little potted bio about you, what you do, what kind of work you've been involved in WordPress, and anything you like, really, that touches just on who you are?
I've been sort of building with WordPress, must be 15 plus years now. Been a while. I moved over to selling plugins because I had a freelance client who was having an issue with a payment gateway, and it sort of snowballed from that. I come to an agreement with the client where I could package this new plugin up and sell it on my site, and it was just a way for seeing if I could change my business and go in that direction. And it's been nearly 10 years.
Wow.
Now in that.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Do you still do the client work, or are you just focused on the plugin business now?
Yeah, it's just full time on the plugins.
Wow.
It has been for a little while now as well.
Okay. So right now, I'll just get you to pause the podcast, dear listener, and go to Aaron's website. It's We Are AG. I guess that's how you would say it out loud, yeah? We Are AG. So WEAREAG.co.uk. As always, if you go to wpbuilds.com and search for this episode, then the links for everything that we talk about that I can remember will be in the show notes. So We Are AG. What's the AG bit?
So it means something different from what it did back then.
Okay.
Ask ChatGPT and it'll come up with some amazing stuff for what AG means.
Yeah, okay. Is it a name that you kind of are saddled with, that it would be better to have a different name at this point?
We rebranded and then it just sort of stuck, and I just didn't want to change it again.
I guess not. So if you go to weareag.com, the bit that I ended up looking at was the plugins section. So if you go to the homepage, you'll see, as it is at the moment, the strapline says WooCommerce payment gateways, payment processing solutions for WooCommerce that you can trust. Our plugins offer seamless integration and exceptional support. And then if you click on the See plugins, there's loads. What have we got? 9, 12, 14, I think, at the minute.
14, yeah. There's probably about 20 that I've built over the years.
And so it's all utterly focused on payment solutions. And so typically when you hear people talk about an e-commerce site, WooCommerce in particular, in this case is the most popular choice in the WordPress space, people always sort of tend to go with the default, I guess. Let's just use Stripe because everybody knows Stripe, and you get Stripe set up and running in like 15 minutes or what have you. Or I guess PayPal's a bit of a holdout, but it does feel as if there are some sort of movers and shakers in the payment space. Things like Molly come to mind and a few others. But you have been doing this for absolutely ages. What is it that you do differently? What are the plugins that you've got? And just give us your overall kind of broad pitch of what you do, and then we'll dig into the weeds.
So a majority of our plugins that we sell are what we would call a traditional payment gateway. Unlike Stripe or PayPal, where it's super easy to get set up with an account, when you're setting up an account with, let's say, Barclays, for instance, you would have to go through legal background checks before you could actually get an account with them. You've probably seen on Reddit people saying that their accounts have been closed because of this when they're using Stripe, and it's because later on, after their account's been active for a bit, they've run it through their checks that they need to do, and then they've decided that they're in breach of terms and conditions, so they've closed their account. This happens before someone get an account with a traditional payment gateway, so there's less chances of that sort of thing happening.
Oh, I see. Okay, so in effect, what you're saying then, Stripe kind of offload the checks and balances, the legal bit, for want of a better word.
I imagine they do some. Well, I mean, don't hold me to it. I've not really done much with Stripe or PayPal.
Okay. I prefer
the more traditional ones.
The fact that they can close you down at a later date because some of the things that you've done, whereas
it could just be a case of the stuff that you sell.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? You may be selling something that doesn't agree with, policy or what have you. And I've definitely heard of that. I've heard of people, especially on the PayPal side. I think PayPal certainly used to, I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to have a bad rep of just people literally waking up one morning to realize that their PayPal account had been sort of closed upon them and they couldn't access funds, and it was very, very difficult to get back. But I do remember back in the day, I used to work with Magento websites quite a lot, and payment gateways back then before. So PayPal was around, but I don't think it was kind of the incumbent it is now. I don't think it was quite so widely used. But there were things like Sage Pay I used quite a bit, and these were really finicky to set up. There was a lot of legwork to be done. You know, even things like getting an SSL back then was a bit of a pain in the neck, and you had to go through some sort of SSL house that you could buy them from and upload all of the different bits and pieces to the server correctly and all of that. But I do remember that the banking piece was particularly hard. But I never knew that was the case, that it was because there were lots of checks and balances. So is it the case then that, so if I'm just on your website, I can see that you're using, and in the UK, some of these names might be really familiar. If you're in different parts of the world, I'm not sure how these names transfer, but there's things like Lloyds, Lloyds is a great big bank. There's Barclays Card. There's other ones like Worldline. In fact, it looks like there's a variety of different ways that you can pay with Barclays Card. We'll get into that. NatWest. What else have we got? And various others. Some of them I've never heard of before. So is it that your plugin kind of enables you to skip all of the checks and balances, or does somebody still need to do it, but you just take care of the linking WooCommerce to the bank so that you can get directly paid?
Yeah, we basically help the integration between the website and the account that they've got with the payment provider they've selected. They still need to go through all the checks and stuff. I think for most of the providers, the checks are like a couple of weeks. So you can't really buy a plugin from us off on the whim. You need to know that you've got an account in place.
Right.
With the providers.
Okay, so let's say, for example, with Barclays or something like that, Barclays Card, the way we would have to do it if we wanted to use your plugins, we'd have to first of all have an account. That account would have to be in good standing, and then we would have to kind of make sure that our account wasn't in breach of any of the bits and pieces that might allow us to do e-commerce through Barclays. And then once that's in place, then we would come to you and buy the plugin. Do you, just curiously, do you offer some sort of, I don't know, money back sort of guarantee? You know, do you offer like a period of time in which that kind of due diligence could fail and therefore you'd offer a refund? Or
yeah, I'm not going to hold people's money ransom.
Okay.
It's not a done thing.
So why then wouldn't you just say everybody use Stripe, or everybody use PayPal? I mean, I know that those accounts can be shot and what have you, but is there a financial benefit for using
a traditional gateway? Yeah, 100%. The fees can be a lot cheaper with some providers, but then some providers will also offer other services like card terminals. So if you've got a brick and mortar shop, you can have your card terminal and your online shop using the same infrastructure, which will make life so much easier for doing your accounts.
Okay, so the fees are lower. I think everybody knows about the PayPal. Sorry, the sort of, well, let's take Stripe because that seems to be the example which most people would recognize. The last time I looked, I think it was either 2.9 or 2.4% plus 20 pence or US cents or whatever. So there's every time you do a transaction, there is a fee, and obviously the bigger the transaction, the more dollars or pounds that transaction becomes that you're paying to Stripe. How would that compare to, well, give us a really favorable example if you can summon one up. Can you think of any one of the banks that you might interact with where they give you a really good rate?
So NatWest, well by NatWest. This is probably a little bit old data, but they did tell us that a £25 transaction using Stripe was going to be like 55p. It would have cost a merchant, whereas if you're using their infrastructure, it works out to be like 30, 40p. So it's a 10p saving. But then if you're doing this over the course of a year, multiple transactions per day, it's a saving.
Yeah. I mean, I know when you say it like that, you think, well, okay,
it's
yeah,
minute.
but you know what? Look after the pennies, and the pounds will look after themselves, as my mother used to tell me. But if you've got a store, and obviously now you can throw in the bricks and mortar piece, you can sell the stuff with the terminal and what have you. You know, if you do 1,000 transactions a day, well, multiply 1,000 by 20 pence. That's decent money, and you are literally giving it away for the convenience of just using the default, and I'm using air quotes when I say the default. So it's not like there's no fees involved, but there are less fees involved. And where do you, as a plugin developer, sit in all of that? Do you have like get a slice of that pie in any way?
No.
And is that different? Do you stand out as a sort of different character there? Do most plugins that offer some kind of functionality like yours, do they typically, I don't know, add on 1% or something like that?
Possibly, but there could be also other deals being done as well. I've made a stand that we will not accept anything. We might do a deal with a payment provider to offer the plugin at a lower cost, but we wouldn't do anything to muddy the waters so that we would be more inclined to push one plugin over another. Okay. I want to be sort of independent. You know, we will point people to plugins that they can do some investigation work to see what fits them, but we're not going to tell them you need to use this one.
Right.
Just because we're going to get something back in return.
Okay, so your offer's pretty clear. There is no like hidden amount that's going to you. What you're paying is you pay the fee for the plugin, which we'll get onto in a minute. And then after that, every slice that's taken out is going directly to the bank. And obviously, you know, you're going to get into that with your eyes open and what have you. It's kind of interesting. If you go onto the plugins page on Aaron's website, you can see them all. And I'll just go through a few just to give you some idea of the cost. And you can tell me whether these are sort of an annual thing or if it's a one-time fee or what have you. So you do have a Stripe for WooCommerce, Stripe checkout for WooCommerce. And that one it says $35. Is that like an annual thing? Are each of these annual?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, all of them are annual.
So everything I'm about to say is annual. Then Barclaycard, I think is the most expensive one, is $169. Why that? Why is that much more than all the others?
The reason why this one's more expensive is back in the early days, we had, as you can see, we've got two for Barclays. The lower rate one is that because the customer is redirected to Barclays service to process the payment. The PCR compliance level for that is much lower. The $160+ plugin for Barclays is taking payments directly on the website. And with this, the merchant needs to think about the higher level of PCR compliance. And this was a way for us to separate the two. Because if you're using a direct payment option, but you're not PCR compliant, then there's a high risk that the payment provider is going to shut your account down because you're not PCR compliant and you're at risk.
Can you just break apart what that acronym is? What would that mean? PCI?
Payment industry.
Payment card industry, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So it's like a set of rules that you need to abide by. Most offsite ones are super simple, and it's literally just a questionnaire that you would literally fill in, and then just making sure that the website's on a PCR compliant server, and all your plugins, all the software that's running on the server is up to date. With the direct one, because card payments are being taken directly on the site, there's a risk that someone could get in the middle of it. So with a higher PCR compliance, they normally want you to have someone to come in and do an audit of the website to make sure that it's all secure.
We have a whole variety of listeners to this podcast, and some of them are highly technical, and some of them are just sort of beginning on any kind of website building journey. And so I'll just break that apart a little bit. So the more affordable one. So there's two Barclay cards. One is $169 and one is $79. So you can see roughly almost twice the amount for the one that's slightly different. If you use the cheaper one, when you go through the checkout process, you are literally the website is being redirected. You're going to head over to Barclaycard. They take on the responsibility of the PCI compliance there, and then presumably there's some handshake. That data is then passed, and you come back to your WooCommerce store, and I don't know, you get the invoice, and it's all logged in WooCommerce. So that's kind of nice, but it is a little bit discombobulating, isn't it? When you see that happening, there is that moment of what's going on? Why does this not look like it did a minute ago? That kind of thing. So for the $169, you are wrapping Barclaycard up in your own website. Everything's happening on your website. So there's none of that. It's just all going on there. And so you can, I don't know, you just, in some small psychological way, it just feels a little bit more reassuring. But there's a lot more going on in the background to make sure that works. Right. Okay. Okay. So then what else have we got? We've got Trust Payments that I confess that's not one I'd heard of before, 79. Lloyd's, 79. Ingenico, not heard of them before, 79. AuthiePay, they're all 79 unless I say otherwise. Let's go with that. TYL, Till, I don't know, by NatWest. And then we've got Worldline online payments for WooCommerce. That one's the cheapest at 25. Barclaycard Smart Pay Fuse, that's 59. CyberSource, 59. First Data Connect, 79. ACI Op, Open Payment Platform. Ooh, that's interesting. Open Payment Platform. And Opeo, 79 and 59 respectively. Honestly, go and check out Aaron's website, wearag.co.uk/plugins. Now, got to ask, apart from the fact that, it would be extremely difficult to build these, do you yourself have to undergo some sort of PCI compliance check? In other words, if we buy your plugins, can we offset that, that legal responsibility, for want of a better word, over to you? Or is it just caveat emptor? What you give us is what we get, and you've still got to do all of the due diligence? How does that bit work?
So most of the payment providers will help with running through the PCI compliance. And some of the payment providers, when we've released them, we've shared the plugin files with them for them to basically approve, to run through, that they're happy. And I've used like Tim Nash before to do an audit on plugins before. Obviously, security is a big thing. And the takeaways that I got from Tim were, second to none. They really did help us in the early days.
So there's still because we use your payment gateway, your payment gateway plugin, I should say. There's still need to be careful, need to be mindful. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. Carry out the regular updates. Make sure that the bank know what you're doing. All of those kind of things still apply. It's not like, okay, this is...
They will check in with you every now and then as well, just to make sure that everything's okay. To make sure that everything's up to date.
And sticking with the Barclays one, because we mentioned it a moment ago, what does the process of setting that up look like? Because if I'd never done e-commerce before, in the time it's taken for us to have this conversation, I could have set up a Stripe account, I could have installed WooCommerce, I could have linked the necessary API private and secret and public keys into the Stripe payment gateway option for WooCommerce. I could be selling stuff by now, basically. Yep. This, I'm guessing, is a little bit more difficult. How do I bind Barclaycard or whatever it may be into the plugin? Is it a similar thing, like API keys go copied and pasted from one place to another?
Kind of. So the Barclays one's a little bit more in depth than some of the other ones that we've got. We say that it should take no more than 20 minutes.
Oh, nice.
To get set up.
Okay.
We've got setup videos that walk you through the whole setup process. We've got, full-on documentation, a setup wizard that walks you through it. There's a few things that need to be done to the account side to make it link up to the plugin correctly. And it when Barclays was the first plugin that I was selling, so that one is like my baby. It's like 10 years old now. And in the early days, we didn't really have much documentation. And a few years back, we heavily pushed on documentation to try and simplify everything, make it easier, because we noticed that people were having problems onboarding with the plugin. So we wanted to try and make it as easy as possible.
It's also quite an anxious thing as well, isn't it? Less so now, I think. But back in the day when you launched that plugin, I reckon there must have been 1,000 ways you could do integrations with, basically e-commerce. There were 1,000 ways you could go wrong. And nowadays with things like Stripe, where you just copy and paste a key and that's you, and link a bank account on the other end, it's like super drop dead simple. But there's a lot going on in the background, isn't there? And I do think it's quite an anxious moment. You know, if you don't want anything to go wrong, you're selling stuff online, you're giving people goods, you don't want anything to come between you and being successfully paid and all of that. So it is important to onboard people properly, I think.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That's been sort of like our motto, is to try and make it as easy as possible. You know, if after watching the videos or the documentation or the wizard and they're still having issues, then, you know, we're on hand to help and guide and get it all up and running.
Do you sort of take notice of what people ask for? So we've obviously gone through the list of the ones that you've got so far. And curiously, like I said, some of them I'd never heard of before. So they're maybe, like, I don't know, in different parts of the world, or maybe it's just that I don't really get myself into e-commerce all that much, so I don't really know. Are you always sort of looking out for new options that you can add to your suite, or are you happy with what you've got?
No, it's changed a lot over the years. What normally happens is we'll have a merchant say to us that, you know, they're going to be moving away from this plugin or this provider, and they're looking to go to this provider. We've had that a few times, and then we've basically built out a plugin for that provider and then managed to keep hold of that merchant. And some of them have been really well for us because of that. You know, we would have never heard of them before. So, yeah, we're always listening.
Yeah, well, that's nice. So I was thinking, you know, if you've got a particular bank that you want to stick with through thick and thin, then Aaron's your man, you know, go and...
brand loyalty is always there, especially with the payment providers. There is brand loyalty.
When you get paid in Stripe or something else, usually there's this period. I don't even know what the period is for, to be honest, but Stripe hold on to your money for a period of days. And I know that amount of time decreases as your account reaches certain milestones. So I presume, you know, either financial amounts that's gone through that account, or maybe it's just time. But, you know, I think it drops down to 3 days or 7 or 1 day or something like that. But the point is, the money never arrives right away. You know, you get paid for the object, the thing that you're selling online, and then you wait a while and hope that Stripe pay you the right amount, which I'm sure they mostly do. Is because you're binding your e-commerce platform to a bank, is that different? Does the money land in your bank account immediately, or is it the same deal where they'll hold it in some kind of, I don't know, escrow?
It'll be the same. Yeah, it'll be like in an escrow for a couple of days.
And so that's the same.
I think it's mostly just to protect against, you know, chargebacks or refunds, or, you know, for money laundering as well. They'll need to do checks on that. Yeah,
but what the number that you receive is going to be, well, 48 hours seems quite short, in all honesty. You know, I'm sure that it's a lot longer than that with Stripe to begin with. So that does seem like a fairly short amount of time. And can you carry out, typically with these kind of banks, Barclays and so on, can you carry out international transactions, or are you bound only to the currency that you're living in? So in our case, pounds. Or can you do transactions in dollars and Australian dollars or Canadian dollars, whatever it may be?
Yeah, some providers have different ways of doing this. Some would open up a second account for you, which would then be for your multi-currency. This account would then need to be all set up and then linked to the plugin. And we support that. Others would just allow you just to add whatever currencies that you want on your account. It just really depends on the provider.
Yeah. And if I was to come to you and I was, you know, I'd only been using, say, Stripe, and I was linking that to my regular bank account. Is there one of these that you would kind of recommend that I look at? Is there a way of kind of figuring out this one's going to work better for me? Or do you just sort of work on the basis of, look, that's your job, you figure that stuff out? Or can you help with that? Like, you know, if you've got this kind of a store or this kind of turnover, then this one might be a good idea. In other words, what separates them? Why would I go for Barclays over Lloyds, or Lloyds over Barclays, or Ingenico over Lloyds, or whatever it may be?
Most of the time it's going to be down to the transaction fees, but there are cases where it will be for features. Some will have features that you want, some won't. It's very rare that we get people asking us who would we recommend, but we would just send them a list of a few just to look at. It's not done for us to tell you who you should go with.
So I'm guessing that most of your traffic then comes from people who are out and have a bank account and have done sort of like a Google search for, I don't know, WooCommerce, Lloyds, and they come up with your website because that's exactly what you do. So they're looking to connect something without this third party in the middle, because that basically seems like what you're doing. If you're banking with Lloyds, and you can't use Stripe as a bank. So Stripe is just sort of that go-between, isn't it? It's that facilitator of the transaction from online through to your bank account with processing on the ways for a small fee. And what you're basically providing is some functionality to just get rid of that middleman. You're going to pay the bank fees only, so it'll be lesser. And you only have one person to deal with. You don't have to worry about Stripe or them closing that account because it's just a direct connection between you and your bank. Have I summed that up about right? Is that kind of what you're doing mostly? Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In which case, I'm going to mention the URL one more time. It is weareag.co.uk. If you've got any different thoughts about this and you want to sort of just check it out, there's obviously that. Do you have an email address or like a social handle that you hang out on where people could find you if they've been intrigued?
I am on Twitter a little bit.
Yeah, I think everybody's on Twitter a little bit these days.
It's AG_Aaron Bowie is my personal Twitter.
Okay, and we'll link to that into the show notes as well. And I'm just going to see if there is a contact form on your website. Don't know.
There's a support form.
Okay, yeah, I got it. I see. So at the top on the main menu, there's a support button which you can click and go check it out. So there you go. We are AG. Go and check out all the different ways that you can bind your bank account to your WooCommerce store. And honestly, I reckon most people are just using the defaults, the Stripes and the PayPals, because it's just, well, I didn't even know your stuff existed. I didn't know it was possible to do what you do. So that's nice that you can cut out that middleman.
Talking to some merchants, I think what normally happens is they set up an e-commerce website, they get set up with PayPal, Stripe, and once they get, their sales are at a certain level, they're like, yeah, we really need to start saving a little bit of money. And they start to look at the other options that are out there.
So that's kind of an interesting way of looking at it. The sort of typical start of a e-commerce, WooCommerce journey is just use the, in quotes, defaults, because they're just there and they're dead easy to set up. And then if your business has been, if you a year in and you're making some revenue, then why wouldn't you make some more revenue by buying a plugin for under $100 in most cases? That'll allow you to shave off 20 pence here, there, and everywhere. And it'll pay for itself pretty quickly, in all honesty, won't it? So there we go. There's the plugins. You've now found out about all of the different things that Aaron's plugins can do. Go check out the website. And Aaron, thank you so much for chatting to me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate that. If you have any commentary on the podcast, head to wpbuilds.com. Use the search to search for episode number 402, and we'd love it if you left us a comment there. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more at go.me/WP Builds. We're also supported by Bluehost. Bluehost, redefine your web hosting experience with Bluehost Cloud. Managed WordPress hosting that comes with lightning-fast websites, 100% network uptime, and 24/7 priority support. With Bluehost Cloud, the possibilities are out of this world. Experience it today at bluehost.com. www.omnisend.com/cloud. And we are also supported by OmniSend. OmniSend, do you sell your stuff online? Then meet OmniSend. Yes, that OmniSend, the email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Hate the excitement of roller coaster sales? Prefer a steady line going up? Try OmniSend today at omnisend.com. And sincere, heartfelt thanks go to GoDaddy Pro, Bluehost, and OmniSend for their support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, that truly is all that I've got time for. Don't forget, we'll be back on Monday for the This Week in WordPress show. Come and join us 2 p.m. UK time, wpbuilds.com/live. Love to see you there and receive all of your comments. We'll be back also on Thursday for a podcast. Head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe to keep updated. But I'm going to fade in some cheesy music and say, stay safe. Have a good week. Bye-bye for now.